Tonight, a tragic accident at LaGuardia Airport, a secret exposed in Hollywood, and academic developments for Clemson's campus. All that and more right here on Clemson News Now. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kalani Adolfo.
And I'm Jackson Cash. Our first story tonight comes from one of the three major New York City airports, where a pilot and co-pilot were killed at LaGuardia Airport in New York City when an arriving passenger jet struck a Port Authority vehicle. 41 people were injured in the collision and treated at local hospitals, including both individuals that were in the other vehicle.
The Port Authority aircraft rescue vehicle and a fire truck were responding to reports of an unrelated odor on a United Airlines flight when it was struck by Air Canada Express Flight 846 at 11:40 p.m. on Sunday night. Although the crash occurred after the wheels of the plane touched down, passengers on the flight have reported a very turbulent descent.
Seconds before the impact, air traffic control staff can be heard signaling to the aircraft, but investigators are still determining if firefighters heard the warnings and why the aircraft crew transferred control just before the impact. The National Transportation Safety Board determined that the truck did not have a transponder, which likely would have helped the radar system detect it.
LaGuardia closed immediately following the accident, canceling over 600 flights going in and out and resuming on Monday afternoon. As of 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning, TSA lines, which were already long with the Department of Homeland Security shut down and staffing shortages, were wrapped around terminals, and Runway 4 remains closed. Both the National Transportation Safety Board and Federal Aviation Administration continue to investigate the accident, and our hearts go out to the families affected.
Turning to the Pacific, multiple islands in Hawaii experienced several flooding over the weekend. They say that it is the worst they have seen since 2004, when floods in Manoa severely damaged homes and a University of Hawaii library. Thousands were evacuated from Honolulu on Friday as muddy floods removed homes from foundations and swallowed cars.
Over 230 people have been rescued from the floods, including 72 children and adults who were airlifted by the National Guard and Honolulu Fire Department from a spring break youth camp after the road entrance to the camp was blocked by the floodwaters. Thankfully, no deaths have been reported and nobody has gone unaccounted for.
By Sunday afternoon, heavy downpours shifted to lighter, scattered rainfall, and more than 2,000 people were still left without water. The governor has stated that the damage could meet or exceed $1 billion. As of Monday, farms across the state have already reported over $9.4 million in damage, and Oahu Emergency Management has received over 400 reports of damaged and destroyed homes. The exact cost of damage is still being assessed.
One huge concern for the citizens was the possible failure of a 120-year-old dam near Oahu's North Shore. Residents downstream of Wahiawa Dam were warned to evacuate the area as the dam was at risk of imminent failure and will result to probable loss of human life. The dam was built in 1906 and is a subsidiary for Dole Food Company. The state has sent 4 notices of deficiency since 2009 and fined the company $20,000 5 years ago for safety deficiencies. In an email, Dole stated, "The dam continues to operate as designed with no indications of damage, and concerns continue to rise."
March is winding down, but the madness is just beginning. With the Sweet 16 starting tonight, this year's March Madness has introduced teams that no one thought would make it this far. And you'd be lying if you said your bracket was still intact.
Day 1 of the men's tournament kicked off with a nail-biter where TCU knocked off Ohio State, beating the Buckeyes by just 2 points and busting over 60% of brackets. There were several almost upsets on day 1, including Louisville, who scraped by against USF, and a surprising shutdown between Duke and Siena. Duke was trailing the Saints by the half, but were ultimately able to come back and secure the win.
Other notable results included Texas A&M over St. Mary's, Texas taking down BYU, and the most notable upsets came from High Point University in their 1-point win over Wisconsin, and VCU over North Carolina. The head coach of the Tar Heels, Hubert Davis, was fired Tuesday night.
Day 2 started with a bang, an overtime win by Kentucky over Santa Clara. Unfortunately for the Tigers, Clemson fell to the Iowa Hawkeyes in a defensive battle 67-61. Furman made it interesting against UConn, but couldn't stop them from dominating the court.
The second round brought more exciting matchups, including Texas beating Gonzaga and Arkansas ending High Point's run. Vanderbilt almost took down Nebraska with a half-court buzzer beater that rimmed out, and St. John secured a game-winning layup over Kansas to advance. Most notably, Tennessee busted the last perfect bracket with their win over Virginia, and the defending champions, the Florida Gators, fell to the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Moving over to the women's side, the first 2 rounds are played at the higher seeds' home arena, with Iowa's court reaching temperatures in the mid to upper 80s. Being a basketball arena in Iowa, they do not have air conditioning, with fans and coaches fanning themselves and people passing out in the stands.
Major upsets are less common in the women's tournament, but Virginia just reached the Sweet 16 with their overtime win over Georgia and a shocking double overtime win over Iowa, becoming the first team in tournament history to advance from the first 4 to the Sweet 16 and leaving just one perfect bracket alive.
Finally, a controversial ruling sent Clemson into an overtime against USC, which the Tigers would eventually lose. Mia Moore hit what would have been a game-winning 3, and a foul was initially called on the play. But after review, officials determined that the shot left her hand after the clock hit 0, and that the referee's signal also came after the buzzer, so there would be no free throws awarded.
At this point, the only thing left on my bracket is broken dreams. Maybe Jordan will have better news for us in our sports department with all the updates on all things Clemson athletics. Jordan, what do you have for us?
Well, Jackson, you mentioned our loss to the Trojans, and honestly, I was probably as mad about it as the players were, because that busted my bracket. It was perfect until the shot from Mia Moore didn't count, and then the Trojans took us down in overtime. But, you know, it's fine. We move on. We get to the good stuff. Starting off with a bang, we turn to Clemson Gymnastics, who competed in the ACC Championship last week. Heading into Greensboro, North Carolina as a 3 seed, the Tigers knew they were underdogs against Cal and Stanford, but also had to compete with UNC, NC State, and Pittsburgh, 2 of which they beat in the regular season, but State they fell to. In a race that was way too close for comfort going into the final rotation, Cal had a lead by just 150 thousandths of a point, and Stanford was tied with the Tigers for second. Clemson put together a school record performance on the bars when it mattered most, with 3 Tigers putting up a 9.9 and junior Quinn Cool closing it out with a 9.9, putting the pressure on Stanford. Their anchor on floor exercise needed a 9.975, but all she could muster was a 9.95, giving the Tigers the ACC championship. In doing so, Clemson Gymnastics became the youngest program in school history to win a conference championship. It only took 3 seasons. The Tigers now head down to Baton Rouge for the NCAA regional round of the tournament as a 15 seed, and they will square off with the number 2 seed LSU Tigers, as well as Auburn and either Air Force or Nebraska on April 2nd at 8 p.m., with the top 2 teams advancing to the regional final just a few days later. On March 14th, a few select Tigers who qualified competed in Fayetteville, Arkansas in the NCAA Indoor Track and Field National Championships. For the second time in school history in the women's 800-meter dash, the Tigers staked their claim to the national championship, with Gladys Shepgetich taking home the championship and becoming the 12th national champion in school history. She finished with a time of 2 minutes and 1/100th of a second and became the first Tiger to win the event since Natoya Gould won it on the same day at the same place 11 years ago. How crazy is that? Moving over to the newly named Conklin Field, don't let women's lacrosse get hot. The Tigers have won 5 straight and look poised for a run in the NCAA tournament this season, where they fell in the second round a year ago to UNC. Before we put the cart before the horse, the regular season isn't done just yet. The Tigers have some big-time matchups to take care of, including a clash with Duke in just a few weeks. Catch the Tigers in action on Saturday at 7 as they take on Virginia Tech and strive for 6 straight wins, tying the longest streak in program history. Last but certainly not least, we've got some softball action to chat about. The Palmetto Series rolled on into Columbia last night, and it was the 24th ranked Gamecocks who were the favorites heading into a prime time clash with the Tigers, who've been rocky this season to say the least. The Tigers came out swinging early and put up 4 quick runs, putting the pressure on the Gamecocks. Then it was up to junior Sierra Manis on the mound. The USC Upstate transfer was terrific the entire night, where she pitched her 9th complete game of the season, allowing just 4 hits and 1 walk, striking out 4 and giving Clemson their 5th top 25 victory of the season and the 11th shutout this year. Now, you can see the Tigers on a 2-game win streak and riding a lot of momentum as they return home this weekend. A 3-game series with the number 10 Florida State Seminoles awaits that could do wonders for the Tigers in the conference standings. The first pitch from the Circle is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at McWhorter, followed by a noon start on Saturday and the series finale at 6 on Sunday. And while we can't be watching the Tigers in Sweet 16 action this weekend, there's still one major thing to do on Saturday. The annual Clemson Spring Football Game kicks off at 1 p.m., and it may help to answer a lot of questions surrounding a team that had its worst season in 20-plus years and lost a lot of talent to both the NFL Draft and the transfer portal. Admission is free, and it serves as a great way to kill time and have some fun before March Madness continues. With that said, now time to go watch my bracket and see how long my national champ pick can keep on dancing. That's all I've got for now. Kalani, take it from here.
Thanks, Jordan. Clemson welcomed their first class of accepted veterinary students to campus on March 14th, beginning a historic new period not only for the university, but also for the South Carolina as the Harvey S. Peeler Jr. College of Veterinary Medicine becomes the first veterinary college in the state. The new graduate school was excited to welcome its new class to campus, where potential students were able to learn about living and learning at Clemson.
Clemson's Veterinary College accepted class of 2030 was made up of 60 in-state and 20 out-of-state students, showcasing Clemson's dedication to preparing leaders within and beyond South Carolina. Stephen Marks, the Dean of Veterinary College, said that welcoming our inaugural class to Clemson is about more than sharing information. It is about introducing students to the Clemson community and the collaborative culture that will shape their education and careers.
In other Clemson news, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has granted Richard Rick Boyles a $495,000 grant to develop disease-resistant and higher-yielding sorghum hybrids to help farmers in the southeast region. Boyles is a professor of cereal grains breeding and genetics here at Clemson, and his project will continue until January 2029.
Sorghum is a cereal grain that is often a preferably alternative to corn because it needs less water and grows well in marginal soils. However, in the southeast region of the U.S., sorghum hybrids are less available because many types of sorghum and bred for different areas and climates. If the initiative is successful, it will reduce the need for farmers in our area to import grain from other places, essentially reducing dependence on outside producers of sorghum. The project also hopes to give farmers more tools and more resilient, productive crops.
Now that we're back from spring break, we have finally passed the winter weather. Jordan is back with your weather update for the week. Jordan, back to you.
Sorry guys, we got some staff shortages we're dealing with tonight, but we've also got a bit of a temperature swing heading our way as we take a look at the upcoming forecast here in Tigertown. We start off tomorrow on a very warm note with mostly clear skies and temperatures surging up into the upper 80s. But don't get too used to that heat, as the weekend will have a noticeable cool down. Saturday and Sunday bring more seasonable conditions with highs dropping back into the mid-60s along with a mix of sun and clouds. Heading into early next week, that cooler weather won't last long. Monday marks the beginning of a steady warm-up with temperatures climbing back through the 70s and eventually pushing into the high 80s by Wednesday. Accompanying that warm weather will be a mostly sunny sky. So Tigers, enjoy that summer-like start to your Friday, grab a light jacket for the weekend, and get ready for another round of warm spring weather. Back to you, Kalani.
Thanks again, Jordan. For all the lovers of reality TV drama, The Bachelorette, one of the most famous reality TV shows with the 23-year tenure, is under hot water for their newest lead, Taylor Frankie Paul. The scandal extends beyond the screen, potentially resulting in a $70 million loss for Disney. It began with the Disney's casting of Taylor Frankie Paul as the Bachelorette in the show's 22nd season. Paul is one of the stars of Hulu's The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and facing public scrutiny after a video of a 2023 domestic violence incident between her and her ex-partner Dakota Morrison was leaked to TMZ last weekend.
The video shows Paul physically attacking Mortensen and throwing a chair at him in front of her own child, who can be heard crying in the background. The release of this video resulted in Disney pulling the plug completely on the already completed Bachelorette season, 3 days before the show was set to air.
Now, an ongoing investigation is also occurring regarding a more recent domestic violence incident between the couple, which caused the 5th season of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives to have to halt filming until the investigation has resolved. The choice of Paul as the Bachelorette's lead has also led to criticism of Disney as a company, who was aware of the domestic violence incident before filming, having paid $5 million per episode to Warner Brothers, and is now set to lose about $70 million.
It is yet to be announced whether Disney will eventually release the completed season of the show to the public, but this ongoing public relations nightmare has certainly shaken up the reality TV industry.
But that wraps up this week's updates. Tune in next week for all things Clemson news, nationally and locally. I'm Kalani Adolfo.
And I'm Jackson Cash. Clemson News Now.